to do your undergrad and law school at?
Princeton undergrad and then Harvard Law School.
Oh, God, you're one of those smart guys.
I was the Princeton Tiger mascot, so I was kind of the class clown of the smart guys.
Is that right? I had a professor at I went to UMKC Law, and our professor.
Kangaroos.
Yeah, something like that. I'm a Missouri Tiger. That's where I graduated from.
Good.
I got my law degree there at Kansas City. Yeah, one of our professors. He was a graduate from Harvard, and he made sure you knew it. So.
Yeah, I hate that. I mean, it's crazy. It's such a liberal place, but then there's a great conservative counterculture there. I mean, it's the same world that sort of birthed Ted Cruz and Sam Alito, and it was fun to come up through that. I think it makes you a better conservative to have to fight with smart liberals for 8 hours a day every day. So,
well, let's try this. You ready?
Yeah, sure.
All right. I am ready.
Due to limitations of time and information, the opinions and advice from this show are not creating an attorney-client relationship and are not subject to a malpractice suit. This is All Out Law with Kyle Wyatt on Springfield's Talk 1041.
Welcome, and good morning. You are listening to All Out Law. I'm your host, attorney Kyle Wyatt of Wyatt Law and Associates in Freedom Traffic Law, located at 2847 South Inger Mill Road, Unit C101, Springfield, Mo. Open Monday through Friday, handling all of your family law and traffic law needs. It is we're continuing on our campaign season interview. You know, last week we had Attorney General John Ashcroft. This week we have a candidate for Missouri. Attorney General. He is President Trump's appellate attorney, and he goes by the name of Will Scharf. Good morning.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. We got to visit with you a little bit prior to coming on. For those who may not have heard of you or know very little about you, what can you tell? What a little brief history of Will Scharf?
Sure. So this is my first time running for office. I'm not sort of a political insider. My background is as a constitutional attorney, violent crime prosecutor, and as a conservative activist. For the last year, I've had the honor of representing President Trump in courts across America, including at the U.S. Supreme Court, where we've won for him repeatedly. As you know, he loves to win, and we're going to keep on winning and winning and winning. But we've dealt really serious blows to this Biden-led campaign of lawfare against President Trump, and it's just really important, I think, now more than ever, that we stand up for the Constitution and the rule of law. And what the left is doing here is just it's outrageous and it's despicable. Before this, I was a federal violent crime prosecutor in St. Louis, led over 100 federal felony prosecutions, locked up carjackers and bank robbers and drug gang members and fentanyl dealers, and worked with the U.S. Marshal Service. I have some great stories from that time. Before that, I spent much of my career working as a conservative activist. During the Trump administration, for example, I had the honor of working on judicial confirmations and nominations. I was on the teams that confirmed Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court, helped build the most conservative Supreme Court in about a century, worked on lower court judicial nominees all over the country. I decided to get into this race because I think that Missouri is ready for a change. I think the Jefferson City establishment has done a terrible job of representing the rights and interests of the people of Missouri. I think it's time to kick the lobbyists and special interests and political insiders to the curb and bring some real conservative governance to this state. I think we're ready for it. I think it's time, and we've just been having a ton of fun getting all over the state. I think Missourians are really ready for a change.
You know, one of the political ads that they have, I've been hearing on the airwaves, is that, you know, you're an East Coast New York liberal, and I kind of laugh about that only because these same people who are putting these ads out, I assume, are in lockstep support of another candidate who was born and raised in the city of New York by the name of President Donald J. Trump. So I don't know how much weight that would give anybody to say, well, he's from New York City. And this, meanwhile, they have a MAGA hat on. That would surprise me a little bit. Speaking of President Trump, we've been asking our guests here. It's been 10 days since the assassination attempt of our 45th president. I've been asking every guest we've had is, where were you when you heard the news that the president had been shot?
Yeah, we were in Mount Vernon, Missouri, at a campaign event, and I got a text from another lawyer on President Trump's team, really as I was preparing to go up to speak, saying that the president had been shot. My team sort of pulled me out of the room. I got on the phone with some folks. We were assured pretty quickly by folks in the motorcade that the president was fine, although obviously a person in the crowd tragically lost their life. But I'll remember where I was for the rest of my life. I think this is one of those epochal moments in American history. And I think it really goes to show, how dangerous the left's rhetoric has been over the last couple years, calling President Trump a tyrant, a dictator, the next Hitler, a threat to democracy. I mean, words have consequences, and I think they have dialed up the rhetoric to the point where the seams of American politics, of American society are starting to come apart. I think that's why it's so important that we deal a serious body blow to the left this November, put President Trump back in the White House, and hopefully we can restore some normalcy to this country.
Yes, and it didn't take long. The Democrats have continued their diatribe of still calling President Trump a threat to democracy. And I don't know what other kind of response they could think of if you really believed there was an individual who was so close of becoming president who would destroy democracy. Wouldn't it be your patriotic duty to take him out? I mean, that's what the left is asking for.
Well, and I think the ironic thing about the left screaming about democracy, and first of all, we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic,
right.
But the left and the Democrat Party just totally subverted their own Democrat process for selecting a president. They assured us for years that Joe Biden was totally fine. They ran this sham primary process. Millions and millions of Democrat lemmings marched in lockstep to reappoint President Biden, their nominee. And then the second things got tight and testy, they kicked him to the curb, and now the party insiders are circling around and basically selecting a nominee that the voters of the Democrat Party wanted nothing to do with just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show how hollow really all of these statements and rhetoric from the left are. The left is ultimately concerned with one thing and one thing only, which is advancing the cause of leftism, which is seizing political power at all costs. And we've seen the consequences of that over the last 3.5 years of the Biden presidency. It's an open border. It's chaos on our streets. It's an economy in shambles. It's wars breaking out over the world. The left can't govern. Marx can't build. The only thing they know how to do is destroy. And that's why it's just so important that we win this election, that we get good conservatives elected up and down the ballot, and that we make sure that we take this country back. Because I'm not sure if we'll have another chance if we don't bring down the victory this time.
Yeah, I've always been a big believer. If you want to know what the Democrats are planning or even doing, just listen to what they're accusing Republicans of doing or planning. Because look, they had like you indicated, a sham primary. There was a certain Democrat by the name of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is a lifelong born and raised Democrat. And they go, you can't be in this. You can't be in this race. Sorry, we're gonna make the rules as such that you have no shot, no chance. And so they stack the cards for Joe Biden, and then, like you stated, and I have to think that there was some power behind this to make this happen, because there was really no reason for Biden to bait Trump this early. There really was. I mean, historically, we don't have presidential debates in June. They're always reserved for September and October. And so it just seemed like this was the out that they were wanting. They didn't want to wait too late or too long for the world to see what we all have known and suspected for a long time. What's your initial thoughts on? You've heard the reports and news that the Secret Service Director Kimberly Chessel has resigned. What did you make of that news?
Yeah, I think people need to be held accountable for the things that they do. And when you have a profound failure in a department the way that we saw in Pennsylvania a week and a half ago, of course there should be accountability. I think we need to get to the bottom of exactly what happened, how this was allowed to happen, who was involved. I mean, the early word out of the Secret Service seemed to be trying to dump blame on local law enforcement, which is absolutely outrageous. This is the worst failure of the Secret Service probably in the department's history, allowing a gunman to get within 150 yards of a former president, the leading candidate for president. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And the fact that the left tried to basically gaslight us for a week and reassure us that nothing was wrong, I mean, it's sort of a don't believe your lying eyes type moment. I'm glad that she's gone, but I hope that the accountability doesn't end there. I think we need to get to the bottom of very serious questions like, did the Trump detail ask for more personnel? And if so, why were they denied? I think we need to understand why this building, clearly should have been within the security perimeter, why it wasn't, who was watching it, and why this was allowed to happen. I mean, we were 2 inches away from, God forbid, civil war, from the end of our republic. I mean, this was a really dangerous moment, not just for President Trump, but for America. And the fact that it was allowed to happen, the fact that this occurred is just, it's the worst failure in the history of that department. And I just, I hope and pray that accountability doesn't end with this single woman.
Absolutely. Will, we're going to have to take a quick break here. You are listening to All Out Law. Good deal. I think everybody can kind of remember. It's almost like, the whole 9/11 deal. Where were you when you heard the news? And then I was talking to a buddy of mine, same thing, like the Oklahoma City bombing. Remember where I can tell you exactly where I was when I heard that. I go back. I don't know how old you are, Will, but I can go back all the way to the Challenger explosion. Remembering being in 6th grade, watching that on television happen.
Yeah, I'm 38. So 9/11. That was the first day of my sophomore year in high school. I mean, that's sort of the moment most like this in my life. But yeah, I mean, I will remember that night for the rest of my life. And yeah, I was set to give a campaign speech. Instead, I, basically just gave prayerful remarks about, the president and about the need to come together. It was really scary. Fortunately, I was on the phone with somebody who was in the motorcade, and they assured us that the president was fine. But it was really scary. It's just, and not knowing what's gonna not just happen to Trump, but what's gonna happen to the country. It's, I'll remember it for the rest of my life.
Absolutely. All right, ready? Let's go back on air. Yep. All right, welcome back. You are listening to All Out Law. We are joined in studio with Missouri Attorney General candidate for the Republican Party, Will Scharf. As we indicated at the beginning of the show, you are also the appellate attorney, one of them, one of the many. I assume President Trump can afford to have as big a team and as a competent team as one could have. You've had quite a few successes. You had a very interesting. I first met you at the Christian County Lincoln Days a few months ago, and I really liked your thoughts when it was discovered that you and a handful of other attorneys were going to be arguing or filing your briefs in the Supreme Court against some of these powerful D.C., New York City lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool story. President Trump hired us, a pretty small team of Missouri lawyers, to be his appellate team last August, and we've had an almost uninterrupted string of wins since then. When we first went up to the court, this is a story I tell on the campaign trail a lot. When we first went up to the court last December, when Jack Smith was trying to rush a trial in D.C., Politico wrote this article about how to argue for him at the Supreme Court. Jack Smith had hired this sort of ultimate D.C. insider, a guy named Michael Dreeben. And then they said that Trump had hired basically 3 guys from Missouri, and we were set up to be the absolute fall guys in that story. And then 2 days later, we won a 9-0 win at the U.S. Supreme Court over this guy, Michael Dreeben. So it's not so bad for 3 guys from Missouri. But it's truly been the honor of my lifetime to get to represent President Trump. It's been an incredible experience. And I think that it's, for those of us who love Missouri, for those of us who think that, Missouri, which has such a wonderful history, should have a really bright future, should be writ large in American history going forward. It's a cool story, the fact that it's basically 3 lawyers from Missouri that have been running around representing President Trump in a lot of these high-profile cases, and that we've won repeatedly for him at the highest levels of the United States court system. So I'm proud of the work that we've done. I'm proud that Missouri has done its part to defend President Trump, and I think we need a lot more of that. Missouri can have a bright future, can once again be one of the leading states in America if we dig in, if we fight, and frankly, if we put the right people in office.
What else in we haven't heard a whole lot of other news. There's good grief. Over 93 different types of charges against President Trump, ranging from Georgia, Florida, New York, D.C. But we're not hearing a whole lot of news about those anymore. The left was patting themselves on the back when Alvin Bragg was able to get a jury of 12 to convict President Trump. What charge? I don't know. I don't know if they ever really picked which charge he was guilty of. And then I guess the sentencing of that case is being delayed till September. But there really hasn't been any news about anything else. I know in Florida we had the recent news last week that the judge handling the documents case, informally known as, has dismissed it based on her belief that, and I think with some insight from Justice Clarence Thomas, that the appointment of Jack Smith was not constitutional, was not legal, nor was the funding of it, and so she dismissed those cases against President Trump. I know that's going to the 11th Circuit. But isn't that going to have like a rippling effect on all the other cases that Jack Smith has touched?
Yeah, it's interesting. When we were brought on last August, it was clear to us that the Democrats, that Joe Biden had this very neat plan, which was to keep President Trump tied down in trial after trial after trial, basically every day from January through until Election Day. And then as we started fighting these cases, this campaign of lawfare just started disintegrating. And where we are now is just an incredible position where all of these cases have either collapsed or on the verge of or on the verge of collapsing. The Florida case, which everybody said was going to be the most threatening, this was so dangerous. Yeah. It's legally flawed in so many ways. But last week, as you said, we had that case absolutely dismissed on the ground that Jack Smith was unconstitutionally appointed. That also has clear ramifications for the D.C. case. In that D.C. case, we won at the U.S. Supreme Court on this presidential immunity issue, which just absolutely guts that D.C. prosecution. I don't believe that prosecution can fairly proceed. We're obviously going to keep fighting there. We're going to have some motions and pleadings due in the next couple months there. Georgia is going absolutely nowhere. I think Fani Willis is in more legal jeopardy than President Trump or any of his co-defendants at this point. We'll have argument over whether she can even stay on the case later this year. And then New York, they got this sham conviction out of a New York jury in front of a left-wing activist judge. That case is replete with reversible error. We're going to get it reversed on appeal. We knew that. But then in addition to that, there are real presidential immunity issues in that case. So in the aftermath of the Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity, we got sentencing pushed back by over 2 months. We're now arguing over basically whether sentencing can proceed at all or whether they have to go back and start from scratch in that case. I think we have very, very strong arguments there. So again, you have these 4 cases and it all looked neat and clean and threatening to President Trump. But the more that we fought and the harder we fought, the more that we've won. And today I can tell you, President Trump has a clear path to run for office. They're not going to be able to tie him down in court. He's going to get to take his message to the American people. And I believe he's going to win in November because his message is so compelling. And I'm just proud to have been part of this team that's repeatedly won victories for him and has shown that this left-wing campaign was lawless and unconstitutional from the start.
As a fellow attorney, I'm curious on the legal theory on the Alvin Bragg case of the Manhattan court. The charges stemmed from a payoff that was prior to President Trump being elected. How does the presidential immunity bleed into that case?
So the Supreme Court was quite clear in its opinion that you can't even use immune acts that are subject to presidential immunity, as evidence in a prosecution over non-immune acts. So what the New York DA's office actually did in that case was they included a lot of stuff from when President Trump was president, things like communications with White House staffers, official communications on White House channels. We believe that much or all of that is immune, which means that entire trial is irretrievably corrupted by the inclusion of that unconstitutional evidence. That's how we were able to get sentencing pushed back. That's an issue that we'll be briefing in the coming weeks and months. But we think that's a very strong ground for that jury verdict to be thrown out. If that case were to go up on appeal, though, we have numerous grounds to challenge the legality and validity of that case. There are jury unanimity issues. There are due process issues. That case is just full of constitutional issues. It's almost an appellate lawyer's dream. Judge Merchan was so intent on rushing that jury through to a conviction that he made a lot of very clear mistakes in the way that he handled that case. We're going to be able to challenge all of that on appeal, and I believe that ultimately that jury verdict will not stand. President Trump is not a convicted felon. He will not be a convicted felon. We're going to keep fighting for him, and we're going to keep fighting for the law.
Well, that's all the Democrats wanted, though, Will, is that label, that moniker, convicted felon. I was it might come as a shock to you, but many colleagues I have in court are liberals, and so I congratulate them on the promotion of Kamala Harris. I think that's a fantastic choice, and one that President Trump will have probably no issues in batting aside. But they go, well, at least she's not a convicted felon, and that's all they have. They have absolutely no records to campaign on. No victories. I can't imagine anything Kamala did that was great. The one job that she was given was be the border czar, and that's worked out splendidly. But that's all they have is convicted felon. I can't wait till this does get dismissed, because, as you indicated, I guess it would be nearly impossible for a jury to. How do we decide what evidence they're going to strike from the record, right? And then how's that? I mean, I think they're going to have to start off all over. But then what about the question of, should even Judge Merchan been leading that trial? I mean, wasn't there a huge bit of conflicts of interest?
Yeah, he should have recused. I mean, this is a guy who himself was a Biden donor. His daughter is one of the leading Democrat fundraisers in the country. Under New York law, under the New York Code of Judicial Conduct, Judge Merchan should have clearly recused. The fact that he didn't, that's reversible error in and of itself. The Supreme Court has been quite clear on this issue. The seminal case is Caperton v. Massey from, I believe it was 2009, where they say that the appearance of impropriety can create an irretrievable due process violation. I think that's what we have here. I think we have more than just an appearance of impropriety, but even the appearance of impropriety can require recusal. And if a judge doesn't recuse in that setting, that's a due process violation. That's a constitutional issue that needs to be addressed. So really, that case from the start was I think, fatally flawed. But I would just note, and this is really important, until final judgment is entered, until sentencing, President Trump is not a convicted felon. Sentencing has been pushed off by several months now. He is not a convicted felon today, and I believe that he will never be a convicted felon. And again, until final judgment's entered, until the fat lady sings, for the left to say that, it's just false. It's misleading. It's false. It's not right. And we're going to keep fighting for President Trump's rights.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. Sharp, we're going to come right back, and let's talk about what's really important. Well, that's important, but what's really important for you right now is a campaign in 2 weeks. The state of Missouri is going to vote, at least on the Republican side, who's going to be our next Attorney General. Everybody, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Good deal. All right, let's the real reason why I wanted you here. I always hate. I feel bad for you, Will. Whenever I hear campaigns, everyone wants to talk about Trump. It's like, well, God, this guy's running for office. It's kind of important. Let's talk about what he needs to do. What separates him from Attorney General Bailey, because that's. I mean, obviously he wasn't elected to that position. Parsons put him in. But I think what people really need to hear, obviously, is what your vision is. But why do they need to replace him? I guess.
Uh, I'm happy to address that
Okay.
on the air.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Or
I
what
think
makes you the
that
better
they,
choice? You know what I'm saying?
yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Welcome back. You're listening to Wall Outlaw. We have with us Will Sharp, attorney, who is running for the Republican Party's Attorney General position for the state of Missouri's Attorney General office. And what motivated you? You got a really good practice. I imagine you're not doing this for the money. You find some people who will take these elected positions because this is more money they've ever made in their lives. What I guess motivated you to decide to run for this open seat here in the Attorney General's office?
Yeah, I think Missouri it's a wonderful state full of wonderful people that's been terribly served by its political class, by the Jefferson City establishment for a really long time. As we've gotten around the state, we've heard this repeatedly, that Jefferson City is just failing. We have Republican supermajorities in both houses of the legislature. Every statewide office holder is a Republican. And yet what we see is not conservative policy coming out of Jefferson City. We've seen our state budget doubled in the last 5 years. We have crime overrunning our streets. Our schools are infested with woke garbage. We've got a marijuana dispensary on every corner. I mean, if these are the results that we're getting out of Republican rule in Jefferson City, I think the people of Missouri are understandably and justifiably upset with that. So we got into this race to provide a conservative alternative to the Jefferson City establishment, to the special interests and the lobbyists who have been running that city for far too long. And the response has just been overwhelming. We've been all over the state. We've driven over 50,000 miles. We've gotten a couple traffic tickets. Maybe we should talk to your law office about that. But really, we have not heard a single person say, I think Jefferson City's doing a great job.
No.
So we feel like we're in this. We feel like we're going to win this thing. I think people are just ready for a change. And when you look at the Attorney General's office today, I mean, they keep losing. Last year, under Andrew Bailey's leadership, the state paid out over twice as much money as it ever has before in legal judgments, $28 million. The previous high was $14 million. We paid out more in 1 year under Andrew Bailey than we had in 4 years previously under Eric Schmidt. Bailey has lost to Planned Parenthood. He's lost on transgender issues. He's lost to Joe Biden at the U.S. Supreme Court in a case that I believe was winnable. He's lost on the Second Amendment. My record is one of winning. I know how to put together teams of lawyers to win big cases, and I think Missourians deserve to have their rights protected both in courts here in Missouri and at the highest levels of our nation's court system by lawyers who know how to win. I think that Bailey is a good guy. He's a good family man. I have a lot of respect for him personally, but I think he comes from the Jefferson City establishment. He worked for Democrat Chris Koster, and then he worked for moderate Republican Mike Parson. And now he sort of recasted himself as a MAGA guy, but I don't buy it, and I don't think the people of Missouri really buy it. I think when you look at his record, he's taken money from the lobbyists, he's taken money from the special interests, he took money from the illegal slot machine companies, and then pulled his office out of litigation against them. When conservative grassroots groups asked him to investigate Pfizer, he turned around and took money from Pfizer and then Pfizer's lobbyists, and we haven't heard a peep out of his office about vaccines or anything like that ever since. I'm currently representing the state of Kansas in their lawsuit against Pfizer over misrepresentations and lies over the efficacy and safety of their vaccines. So I think this race presents a very clear contrast between a conservative outsider who knows how to win in court and a Jefferson City insider who's consistently failed to produce results for the state of Missouri.
Right. We had reports in the last couple of weeks. Andrew B is also going to be, looks like, sit down for a deposition here soon regarding ethics issues.
Yeah, this is the first time a Missouri Attorney General has been ordered to sit for a deposition, I believe, since Webster, who ended up going to prison. Bailey's office was sanctioned for ethical violations. This is in the Jackson County tax assessment case, a really important case. I believe, based on what's been reported, that Bailey decided to play politics with a very important legal case instead of just winning it in court. And that's just a terrible decision, and it's just unfortunate that the people of Missouri aren't having their rights defended because of this sort of political sideshow. And to me, that's shameful. I hope that we decide to make a change as a state this August. I think we're on the path to win this thing.
What is you feel qualifies you better than your other opponents? I assume it's just more than just you and Bailey running for the spot. But what qualifies you more than your other opponents for this position?
Well, the only other, I guess, real opponent, there's a Democrat running named Elad Gross. He's a nice enough guy, but he is as far left as you can get. He's soft on crime. He's weak on crime. I think that putting him in office would be a tragic mistake for the state of Missouri if you want to clear up our streets and if you want to restore some sanity to the state. I think the last thing we need right now is a far leftist in statewide office in Missouri. We think that this primary in August is going to be the dispositive election. I think that if we defeat Andrew Bailey, I think I'm going to be the next Attorney General, and we're just really excited for the run-in here.
What are the major issues that you see that are coming up that's going to be on your plate if the state of Missouri puts their trust in you?
Yeah, I mean, I think crime is obviously one. I think we have a real problem all across the state, in our cities, but increasingly in rural areas as well, with crime. We need a statewide plan to deal with this. Right now, we don't have enough police officers on the street. We're not prosecuting enough cases seriously enough. And then we have weak bail and sentencing laws that have resulted in this catch and release system where the second a criminal is arrested, they're cut back out on bail, and typically they don't see prison time, even for very serious offenses. We need to change all of that if we're going to get this problem under control. I think education is another one. In DESE, the State Department of Education, we have this vast bureaucracy that seems to be totally unable to get our kids the education they deserve, and seems totally committed to just advancing the cause of leftism and wokeism in schools all across the state. I've pledged that I'll investigate DESE on day one. I think it's time to really get in under the hood of that department and so much of the rest of our state bureaucracy, and just ensure that Missourians' rights are being protected and that our taxpayer dollars aren't going to fund radical leftism in our state government. So I can go on and on like this. I think we need to kick the lobbyists and the special interests in Jefferson City to the curb. I think they have far too much influence. I haven't taken a single dollar from Missouri lobbyists, and I won't. I think right now we have this issue where we keep electing Republicans who then don't govern like Republicans. And the people who are really empowered in Jefferson City are folks whose names have never appeared on a ballot, this sort of permanent political insider class who have just run our state into the ground for decades.
You know, the other issue that I know is really is really important for many folks out here is truth in sentencing. You know, too many times we have, and you were a federal prosecutor, is that correct?
Yeah, assistant U.S. attorney attached to the violent crime unit in the Eastern District of Missouri.
Yeah, you have seen, as I have, that you'll have somebody who has done a heinous crime, and a jury of their peers finds that they are guilty of the charges. Judge sentences them, and let's say 15 years in Department of Corrections, and 3 years later they're back out on the street. And that's a huge problem for many of those in my profession. We got to take a really quick break here. Will, I'd like to hear your take on what can be done to correct this issue that it's festered for far too long. We'll be right back after this message. Yeah, this issue of truth and sentencing. I don't know if you've campaigned much in Webster County. Sheriff Cole is leading the charge on that. Judge Evans, Justin Evans, out there also in the 30th Circuit. It's something that are really pushing hard the legislators to fix, because I was talking to Judge Evans just a couple days ago. He called me up frustrated that he had just sentenced a woman for possession of methamphetamines to prison, and then a few months later, she's back in his court committing another crime.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah, I mean, we call it the SES carousel, that you end up with people who are repeat convicted felons who get suspended sentences over and over and over again.
Yeah.
My view is that it should be one and done,
Yeah.
that you get a suspended sentence on your first felony if the judge thinks it's appropriate. And after that, you're going inside, period, end of story. And then we need a system like Florida has and like the federal system, where you actually have to serve 85% of your stated sentence before you're eligible for parole, because MODOK, their priority is just getting people out of their system.
Right.
So they're cutting people loose on parole far too early.
Well,
we just don't.
Let's carry that back on here. That's pretty
Okay.
good there for the air. We'll take it. This is our last segment.
Okay, cool.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to Springfield's Talk 104.1. We are with Will Scharf, candidate for the Republican Party for Missouri Attorney General. Before the break, we were getting ready to discuss truth in sentencing, victims, families, frustrated. I know sheriff's departments, judicial branch, frustrated. It's like a catch and release type of thing. When we catch these bad guys, we sentence them to do time in prison to protect the community, and then for whatever reason, the Department of Corrections kicks them back out, and then guess what? Surprise! They commit more crimes and torture and harass the community. What do you see as the ailment, and what do you believe it would be the cure?
Yeah, so I think there are two related issues here. We need bail reform, and we need truth in sentencing reform. So a couple years ago, the Missouri Supreme Court pushed down new bail guidelines that basically instructed every court in the state to not hold people in pretrial detention, even when they commit very serious crimes. So my view is that if somebody commits a violent crime, if somebody commits a Class A or B felony, if they pose a danger to the community, which is the constitutional standard, they need to be held in jail every day from their arrest until their trial, conviction, and sentencing. What we have now is you have people who get arrested for serious crimes. They get cut loose 24 hours later. Their trial date gets pushed and pushed and pushed, and they're out on the streets for maybe 3 years until they actually see justice. It's not a system that actually deters crime at all. And then on the sentencing front, you have, we're a deep red state in most parts of the state, a deep blue judiciary. So you have judges that are giving people suspended sentences time after time after time. You have people who might be serving probation on 4 different cases at the same time, which just doesn't make any sense. The point of probation is it's sort of your last chance. Yeah. So we need much tougher sentencing laws. And then, as you said, we have a huge problem with people, even the folks who were sentenced to serious time in prison, they never end up serving that time, that they might get sentenced to 7 years on a robbery, something like that, or a burglary, and they get cut loose a year and a half later on parole so that they're right back on the streets reoffending. We need to actually deter crime. What criminals respond to is a certainty of punishment. What they're getting right now is the opposite of that. So I believe on the crime front, you think about policing, prosecution, and then the courts, we're failing on all 3. We don't have nearly enough police officers on the streets, which means we're not getting enough quality arrests, particularly when it comes to violent crime. Prosecution, we're not getting enough convictions. We're not getting enough serious convictions. You have too many prosecutors who are letting guys go with a slap on the wrist with misdemeanor charges instead of putting in the time and effort to ensure that they're convicted on the felonies that they deserve to be convicted of. And then on the back end, you have a court system that's basically set up to do this catch and release thing over and over and over again. And the people who end up suffering are ordinary law-abiding Missourians who are trying to go about their lives, but who have repeatedly had their lives interrupted by the specter of crime in their communities. This is a problem that we need to fix. If we don't fix the violent crime problem in this state, Missouri will not have a bright future. I think there's room for the Attorney General's office. I think the legislature needs to get off their butts and start changing the law. I think we also need court selection reform. I think we need much tougher judges on the bench. And the Missouri plan, which is, Greene County, St. Louis, Kansas City, and then the appellate level, the Missouri plan has resulted in us having a deep blue judiciary no matter how conservative the state gets. I think it's time to do away with the Missouri plan.
Yeah, nice to be called the nonpartisan plan, right? The example for all of America to do. Let's take politics out of the judiciary, but you and I and everyone who pays attention realizes it's anything but not politics. I mean, political. I mean, it's very partisan, and. I agree. I like it to be back to where it was. Greene County was prior to, I think, 2006 might have been the last time I voted for a Greene County judge. Now we just have retention votes. And luckily for us here in Greene County, I mean, we have really fantastic judges. But definitely in the appellates, where you got the Court of Appeals or in the Supreme Court, we see too many decisions coming down that would fly in the face of conservative principles. We saw you're a St. Louis resident. You got a front row seat to see what it's like to have liberal activists as a prosecutor with Kim Gardner. Good God, what was it like living in that community when you had a prosecutor who felt bad for the criminals and didn't give a crap about the victims?
Yeah, I mean, Kim Gardner was a massive problem in St. Louis, but St. Louis was the murder capital of America before Kim Gardner, and it still is the murder capital of America today. I think the problem is deep-seated. I think the problem is it's in the prosecutor's office. It's also in the courts, and there aren't nearly enough police officers on the street. I mean, this is a serious problem that affects, millions of Missourians, and yet Jefferson City's been totally absent at the wheel and really hasn't done anything comprehensive to deal with crime in the state, unlike other conservative states like Florida and Texas. On the Missouri plan, I mean, does it make sense that trial lawyers effectively get to pick the judges that they argue their cases in front of? I think that's just manifestly unfair. I think it doesn't make sense to turn over selection of basically a third of our government to a professional cartel in the Missouri Bar Association. I mean, from just a basic good governance constitutional design standpoint, I think it's just the wrong way to pick judges. And the effects of it are on the streets every single day. It's soft on crime policies being pushed down by the Missouri Supreme Court that affect each and every one of us. So I'll push for court reform. I think we need a much harder line when it comes to prosecuting. We see prosecutors' offices all over the state. They don't want to go through the process of charging felonies. That requires either impaneling a grand jury or going through a preliminary hearing, which requires a lot of work. So instead, they give repeat criminals, slaps on the wrist in terms of just charging them with misdemeanors, letting them off light, and people just keep going on and reoffending time after time after time. When I first started as a prosecutor in St. Louis, you'd pull a guy's rap sheet, and he might have 7 prior felony convictions, and yet he'd never served a day in the Department of Corrections. He'd never served a day in prison. That's a failed system right there. That shouldn't happen. But that's the situation that we're dealing with today.
The attack ads on you had stated that you were light on crime, letting bad guys get away with murder. How do you respond to criticisms like that? I think you can look at anything. As attorneys, I always have to take a kind of step back. I handled a high-profile case that got on the radar of Nancy Grace some years ago, and you can almost spin any kind of facts to your version of truth. But I assume you're not one who just lets bad guys go away, and you're in favor of more crime.
I think the hundred some odd guys who are currently rotting in federal prison because I sent them there would disagree that I am a light on crime prosecutor. We took a hard line on this stuff, and we threw the book at a lot of violent criminals, and I'm proud of the work that I did. They cite one case where, I had a low-level drug dealer who tried to escape from the police and almost hit a cop with his car. And they say somehow I was light in that case. I mean, that guy's serving, I think, almost a decade in federal prison today. I'm proud of the work that I did. I think when you match up my record against Andrew Bailey's as a prosecutor, I mean, last year his office let a quadruple rapist off with $1,200 in fines. When he was in the Warren County prosecutor's office, everything that we're talking about here, misdemeanor pleas for felony offenses, letting people off light over and over and over again, that's the way the Warren County prosecutor's office functioned. That's the way Andrew Bailey acted as a prosecutor. And his former boss, the boss of probably the worst prosecutor's office in the state, Kelly King, he hired to be his deputy attorney general. So I think, if anything, Andrew Bailey needs to own his record as a light on crime prosecutor. And I'll match up my record with his any day of the week. And I promise you, my record is a heck of a lot stronger than his is.
I've been saying for a while, I brought it up to Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, when your opponents have to come at you and put up lies and misrepresentations, it's almost a sign of a desperation that they don't have really a record of their own that they want to run on. I think my keyhole would be a disaster for the state of Missouri. And so, when we hear on the airwaves, Wall Street Willie, it's catchy. I mean, it really is. It's kind of a catchy deal, Wall Street billionaire. But they don't really get into why they believe that you're not conservative, or why does being backed by D.C. or Wall Street have any impact on your conservative principles or values or your record.
Yeah, I've never worked on Wall Street. No member of my family has ever worked on Wall Street. It's a catchy name. Like, we kind of enjoyed it when they pushed it out. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But it's a nonsense personal attack because they're scared of fighting me on my record. My record is as a violent crime prosecutor is strong. And my record as a conservative is I think, unparalleled. I've consistently put up wins for the conservative movement, whether that's representing President Trump, whether that's the work I did confirming his judges and justices during the previous administration. They can't attack me on my record, so instead they level baseless personal attacks. I mean, I was born in New York because my parents happened to be living there at the time. I grew up mostly in Florida. I moved to Missouri right out of law school, and I've spent my career here. This is my home. This has been my home for basically my whole adult life. Andrew Bailey wasn't born in Missouri either. He never seems to mention that. I mean, he was born in Kansas, raised mostly in Mississippi. So this is not it's not real. And I hope that the voters of Missouri are able to cut through all this garbage and just judge us based on our records, because I know that my record is a heck of a lot stronger and more conservative than his is.
Well, we have 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. We were recording this on Tuesday. What's your message to Southwest Missouri voters?
Look, if you're really happy with the government that you're getting out of Jefferson City, if you think the Jefferson City establishment is doing right by you and is doing a good job, I'm probably not the right candidate for you. If you're ready for a change and you think we need to kick the lobbyists and the special interests and the political insiders to the curb, if you want to break that Jefferson City establishment, then we probably are the right candidate for you. In fact, I would say we are the right candidate for you. This election is a choice between the Jefferson City establishment and a conservative outsider. They are coming at me the way they are, with vicious personal attacks, because they are terrified of what I will do if I get into office. They're terrified that I will uncover all of the public corruption in Jefferson City, that I'll uncover how the Missouri deep state, these unaccountable departments and agencies, are running this state into the ground. The Jefferson City establishment, more than anything, is terrified of accountability, and that's the accountability I want to bring to them starting next January.
Well, I appreciate you, Will, for your time. I really do. We got to leave. Until next time, guys.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Like and share. You can go on YouTube and watch our show today. Until next time, stay tuned. All right, Mr. Sharp, best of luck for you in your campaign. You guys, you're going to be in and around Southwest Missouri again before the election?
Yeah, we were where were we last night? It's all running together.
Right.
We were in Southwest Missouri last night, and we were in Lamar. We were in Lamar, Missouri last night,
Right.
and we're up in St. Louis for the next couple days, and then I think we may be back down on Monday. But the schedule's kind of in flux right now, so we'll have to figure it out. But yeah, we've been in Southwest Missouri a ton. We've been in Springfield, Christian County. I mean, just all over the place. It's probably my favorite part of the state. So yeah, just need to keep on fighting. 2 weeks
Absolutely.
to go.
Well, hey, if we can get you past August 6th, hopefully we can get you back on the show.
Yeah, for sure. Would love that.
All right. Well, you have to take care.